3.
Shalom, and welcome back to St. Reviews. In the spirit of this heathenistic pagan season, I'll be reviewing the scariest thing I could find, a political documentary. Today we'll be reviewing Hillary's America, the secret history of the Democratic Party. This film was created by Dinesh Studios and directed by Dinesh D'Souza. The studio is also the creator of America, Imagine a World Without Her, What's So Great About America, Life After Death, The Evidence, and 2016, Obama's America. Consider them a Republican version of Michael Moore, except they create films on the right side of history. Speaking of Moore, I'm looking forward to a review of his own documentary of the other presidential candidate called Trumpland, because no bipartisanship here would be horrifying. A bit of background on director Dinesh D'Souza. He was actually born in India and found his footing as a political commentator and author after becoming a naturalized citizen in America in the year 1991. He's written 2 New York Times bestsellers, What's So Great About Christianity, and Life After Death, The Evidence. He also wrote the source book material for America, Imagine a World Without Her, as well as What's So Great About America, The End of Racism, and The Roots of Obama's Rage. He also co-starred in the film Michael Moore Hates America. So it's evident this is a man who knows his political spooks. D'Souza in 2014 actually pleaded guilty to using a straw donor and served 8 months in a halfway house and was slapped with a 5-year probation and a $30,000 fine. However, after serving his time, he channeled his inner Nelson Mandela and returned stronger than you can possibly imagine, rising like a neoconservative phoenix. The movie features interviews from political scientist Carol Swain, a fellow conservative author and commentator, Jonah Goldberg, and Peter Schweizer, the especially juicy author of the book Clinton Cash. The film opens with an animated cinematic that is beyond comprehension. It is as terrifying as it is beautiful. It's an explosion of hot-blooded American fatalism and colors. It's like a near seizure-inducing warning that the faint of heart and American spirit shouldn't bear witness to what's to come. The film then actually begins with an expose on Dinesh's trial and his time in the halfway homes, and his little romps with his trusty jail buddies. Actors recreate the crimes of his eccentric inmates, such as a Ponzi scheme involving swindling fake life insurance claims to the elderly, convincing them to donate a part of their savings to charity after they die, charity, subsequently murdering the client once they sign to expedite the process of getting the money to the charity, which happens to be themselves, of course, then denying everything when questioned by the police. Of course, the luck runs out, and they wind up in jail. What is both interesting and confounding about this part of the film is how it's used as an anecdote to tie together all the inconvenient truths this movie likes to throw at you. Dinesh then goes on a half-real, half-acted-out exploration of the DNC headquarters. After transitioning into the acted half of his journey, Dinesh travels into the bowels of the headquarters and comes across a portrait of the late, great Andrew Jackson. This is where I consider the movie to take its drop. This is the part of the film where it drastically yet somehow gently switches into maximum political overdrive. It takes your hand, and it takes you back in time. Like the teacher from the magic school bus drove in front of your house and picked you up, and made herself and the rest of the class all wear tinfoil hats and take a red pill with their chocolate milk at lunchtime. Then, iota by iota, Dinesh strings together vicious scenes acting out his version of the Democratic Party's history, a 95 thesis of racial, economic, and political disputations. It goes from Jackson's abuse and sexual pension for slaves, the viciousness of the antebellum movement, to the roots of the KKK and Johnson's alleged 200 years line. It also goes to reenacting Jim Crow and Wilson's pipe dream-like vision of Birth of a Nation, which the KKK actually burst out of the theater. It also goes to the big and inner-city plantations of the 20th century, to, of course, the gradual compromising of American democracy. Hillary's America chronicles nearly every harrowing racial period in American history, and whether through logic or just twisting turns or just by these creative narration, it pins everything on the Democrats. The effectiveness of the film's accusations, among a lot of other factors, depends on the viewer's mindset going in and their ability to put their history knowledge to the test. For me personally, there were plenty of statements and assertions that I was able to nod my head a bit, stroke my beard and be like, true, that's a very good point, or, an okay point. But there was an abundance of content, especially in the anecdotes and the historical scenes, that just didn't land or evoke the opposite feeling of, good God, man, add some context, you're scaring me. I don't want to give away the exact fashion Dinesh ties in his jail time to the corruption of the Democratic Party, but it'll make you feel intrigued, like, oh, it makes sense, or it'll make you feel flabbergasted at the explanation. Now, with Hillary, what does he cover with her exactly? Again, I don't want to ruin the magic of the anecdotes. This is like 75% of like the film's impression on you. Dinesh employs a few examples. For example, he links Hillary to her past with the Goldwater girls when she was a child. She brings up her time as a lawyer, her connections to the Planned Parenthood Foundation, her discipleship to Saul Alinsky, as well as her own foundation. The real-life footage and the acting portrayals are surreal and a bit harrowing when it switches from the news stories to the actor's portrayal of Hillary. At one point, there's this creative scene where Hillary swoons in on a voter left out in the cold, riddled with envy for the upper class, and she takes him out to dinner. I can think of very few scarier prospects than Clinton taking me out to dinner to earn my vote. My favorite takeaway from this part can be summed up in 2 words: earthquake money. So then, the film, for the most part, takes pieces of history and makes an earnest attempt to provide context, but of course, it has a tremendous bias and has a tendency to exaggerate the truth or give such vivid imagery that's just so absurd and shocking that you can't look away. It's like a train wreck. And while it definitely drags you in by your feet, it's very immersive, the message it delivers can get lost or seem a bit inauthentic, despite whether or not it's based on reality or if it's true. If you want a good movie to turn your mind off to and just enjoy the colors, or if you want something to spur you to do extra research out of interest or harrowing disgust, then I'd give it a peep. This is a good, wholesome family film, if you live in a house of boomers. The theatrics are extremely fluid, and it has a beautiful mix of camera shots that follow a typical angle documentary format, but also the common camera angles used in drama shows and movies. It's kind of like a fusion between high-quality History Channel documentaries and then action flicks that you see in the big blockbusters. Examples of the latter camera angle include D'Souza's exploration of the DNC and his time in the halfway house, and the former, more documentary-like camera angles take part in most of the dynamic historical scenes and Dinesh's anecdotes. It seems for the historical cinematic pieces, Dinesh took pages out of the History Channel's handbook. There is no set climax of the film. Like I said, after the drop, it just drags you by your feet along for the ride. There are some juxtapositions of Dinesh's travels and interviews, but it's an otherwise stream of consciousness of the sinful history of our less literal boys in blue. However, the final scene, despite the emotional roller coaster this film sent myself and my friends, it connected to me a sense of terrifyingly unbridled patriotism I never knew I had within me. It was some scary stuff. It may have been a personal coping mechanism or Dinesh rewarding me, my id, with a raging waterfall of American pride, but I was left pretty speechless and roaring at the same time. There are plenty of horror movies out there, but this is one of the few that I've seen to actually elicit that type of desperate reaction out of me. If nothing else, this movie has redefined the notion of theatric liberty for me. The liberties and the scenes D'Souza chose to drive home his points will either have you tilt your head, bug your eyes, flip your hand up in a dismissive fashion, or make you assume the see no evil position. To toe the line of getting too political, I'll read off some excerpts of some of my favorite testimonials. From The Guardian, Joseph Hotman described the film as paranoid and so demented that no synopsis could do it justice. Dan Geyer of the Boston Herald called the film an embarrassment to propaganda films. Kurt Hyde of the New American called the film a mixed bag. But then John Funt from the National Review says the film is over the top in places, I think that's an understatement, and definitely selective, but the troubling facts are mostly accurate and extensively documented in the book that follows the film. And the film is intensely patriotic. Well, I'm glad I got that out of my system. That's it for this loosely spooky theme review. Thank you very much for tuning in, and tune in next week for the next super sensational Saint Review.